February was mild and sunny this year, and it felt incredibly spring-like. But it's easy to get carried away and to think that spring truly has arrived, especially when the weather lasts so long, when really it's most likely just full spring. Anything can still happen in March. But when cold winter days turn into this, I suddenly feel a strong rush of, oh no, I'm so far behind on everything, spring is beginning right now, and I keep forgetting things aren't exactly as they seem. But full spring or not, it's definitely time to start thinking about the coming gardening season. Usually I'd start right after New Year's by taking seed inventory, planning new purchases, and sowing seeds that have a long germination time. However, this year there's been so much other stuff going on, and I've just kept putting it off again and again. And now I'm a bit behind. So I gathered up some slow-growing seeds and seed-starting supplies, and finally started my growing season in the last week of February. I somehow managed to suppress the urge to start all of my seeds at once, because the days are still far too short to properly support the growth of seedlings. Or at least that's the case here, which is at about 59 degrees north. Seedlings need much more light than fully grown plants, and unless you have a fairly good setup of grow lights, it's very hard to avoid leggy seedlings this time of year. Leggy seedlings aren't the end of the world, of course, but it's always better to minimize them as much as possible. You don't necessarily gain anything by starting seeds too early, you just give yourself much more hassle in the future. Now, what I have now is, I don't know what half of these are called in English, I just realized. I have brudeslør, baby's breath, I think it's baby's breath. I have spring onions, is that a thing? I have echinacea, there is giant verbena, larkspur, delphinium, larkspur, is that larkspur? I think it's larkspur. Celery, catnip. Not only my cat, but every cat in the neighborhood loves it so much, and they won't just roll around on it and squash it to death, they will actually eat it. So these tend to disappear, and I have to sow a bunch of them and just have them on hand so I can plant new ones, keep them summer safe, and then just transplant them when the old ones disappear. Then I have leeks. Yes, leeks. I like using old ice cream tubs to hold the smaller pots. They are super convenient, they fit on almost every windowsill and are easy to move around the house. I've been using some of them for almost a decade now, and the pots are equally old, and even though I treat them pretty roughly, they hardly ever break. I'll also use paper pots for plants that don't tolerate having their roots disturbed all that much, since you can just transplant the whole thing directly into a larger pot or into the ground. But this isn't really a concern with any of these plants. Pots made of organic material have a tendency to both dry out too quickly and to grow moldy all at the same time somehow. If not for that, I would use them for everything. I went outside to have a look at the garden and to start planning this year's crop rotation, as well as to think about which projects to prioritize this spring and later in the year, and of course to look for snowdrops. One of my life philosophies is to not let perfection become the enemy of the good, and that's why this is very much not a plastic-free garden. You will, for instance, see plastic weed barriers and ground covers here and there. I do want to phase out as much plastic as possible, but it's a gradual process and I have to do what works for me and for this garden. The garden is at its least visually pleasing this time of year, with all the messiness and unfinished projects on full display. I'll do a more proper garden tour in the future, but for now here's what it currently actually looks like. Behind the greenhouse, there's a future strawberry corner, as well as a bed of valerian root in desperate need of help. When I moved here, the property already had these two large square kitchen gardens. They've always been here, but they were largely overrun by tenacious perennial weeds, such as couchgrass, creeping bellflower, wood horsetail, and everybody's favorite, ground elder. It's taken some years, but with a systematic approach and lots of patient digging and monitoring and digging and more monitoring, most of it is gone now. Most of it, not all of it. Except for the horsetails, they are invincible and are thriving. Installing these paths, a very hard word to say by the way, was a total game changer, and I'm so happy about them. But I can see that they need another layer of bark soon. I still have this problematic corner to fix up though. There's a stone fence / perennial weed nursery here, which I started removing last year. Or rather, I had help. Just for the record, I didn't do this myself. In summer, you can't even really see the stone fence anymore because it's completely covered in ground elder. As far as I can tell, the stone fence serves no real purpose, but I wonder if the idea was to create a beneficial microclimate. But it's located on the south end of the kitchen garden, meaning the bed is on the north side of the stones. If it was supposed to be a microclimate, you'd want to plant on the south-facing side of the stones. But regardless, it's just a source of frustration at this point, and I'm so excited to get rid of it. And then I can finally finish this last part of the kitchen garden. Stone fences are important though for habitats, so I'm not actually getting rid of it, I'm just moving it to another part of the property where hopefully it won't be in the way and it will still be a good home for critters. Literally the next day, second winter arrived. Judging by the forecast, it will only get colder from here on out and stay that way until mid-March. I feel much less in a hurry all of a sudden.